It completely stole my life. It's taken my job, my career, my future. Your whole life becomes just the four walls of your room.
When she's really bad, she doesn't have the energy to chew, she doesn't have the energy to swallow. Moving in bed is too hard. All the people who say it's in your head, get real, get real.
Someone who is so physically unwell is being treated so poorly as if they can just snap out of it. I don't think I can think of another condition that would be treated this way. It just blows my mind.
I just don't think we've got to grips with the severity of the situation. Why is this not an emergency?
Myalgic encephalomyelitis, or chronic fatigue syndrome, is a complex and chronic illness. For some, it can look like difficulty thinking and fatigue that doesn't go away with rest. But in severe cases, the illness can stop you from being able to eat, move, or even speak. And exposure to light, sound, or touch can cause intense pain. It's estimated 65,000 New Zealanders have the disease, with long COVID driving ME rates 15 times higher than before the pandemic. But misinformation from decades ago, which said the illness was psychological, has caused stigma, which still impacts patient care today.
Waking up, it's like you've been hit by a truck. Everything's shaking, vibrating internally. My brain feels inflamed. It's like you've got a concussion. It is honestly shocking how bad you can feel and still be alive.
Rhiannon has had ME for more than 20 years and has been bedridden for the last 3.
Every day I would start getting worse. If I did anything, I would try to do less, but even then that was too much, to the point that I couldn't sit up anymore.
ME is a neurological disease that can impact everything from the brain, muscles, and heart to the immune, nervous, and digestive system. There is no cure, and even the exact cause is unknown. But it is often triggered by an attack of the immune system, usually by a virus. Women are 4 times more likely to get it than men, and for many, it is a lifelong illness, with 10 to 25% of people with ME becoming housebound or bedbound.
It's like you've got a battery that not only charges incredibly slowly, but has very small total charge. So for people who are severe, their total charge may be less than 5%, and their recharge time might be days and days or weeks.
Rose Sylvester is an ME educator. She says the defining symptom of the disease, which makes it so debilitating, is post-exertional malaise.
So what happens as that battery gets down is you never really know when you're getting to the bottom. And it may be that 2 days ago you did something that significantly depleted your battery, and even though you're resting, those last few percent are busy depleting because your charge is not strong enough to overcome that. And so that causes a situation where you get a delayed crash.
A crash can last days, months, or even years. And for those with severe ME, extreme sensitivities to light, sound, and touch means some people have to lie alone in darkness to cope with the pain.
I'm just going to lift your feet up there.
People with severe ME need 24/7 care, but Rhiannon is only eligible for 3 hours of funded care a day, and there's nowhere in New Zealand set up for her. With no family member able to look after her, Rhiannon has had to live in hospital for months. She previously tried living in a rest home, but says staff were not trained in ME care. But today, she's finally leaving hospital.
I'm moving from hospital today to a care home run by the family of another girl who has the same condition. I'm very lucky to get out of here.
One mother of a severe ME patient has taken it upon herself to set up a shared care home in her house. This is Glenys Rumsey. She's been her 23-year-old daughter Tammy's full-time carer for 5 years.
This illness has robbed my daughter her life. She was living life to the max. Always on the go. She was a surf lifesaver and she loved theatre. She was using all her energy up with the last production that she did.
But Tammy got glandular fever at 15 years old. At first, she recovered, but in 2020 at university, she noticed she would have memory lapses and started getting so tired she couldn't move.
She would drop to the ground and freeze or become paralysed for a short period of time. Her friends had been taking her to the emergency department. While she was waiting, lying on the gurney, she would slowly start to be able to move again. And by the time the doctor saw her, he would say things like, "Have you got boyfriend problems?"
Tammy quit her part-time job and took breaks between semesters, but the illness only got worse. Within 3 months, she couldn't sit up in a chair, and 4 months later, she was in a reclining wheelchair. She was diagnosed with POTS and celiac disease, and then finally, a year later, the ME diagnosis came.
In July last year, she was no longer able to get out of bed at all. She dropped from 64 kilos down to 45.
Living an hour out of Wellington at the time, no doctors were able to do home visits for Tammy, and she was too unwell to get out of bed.
I tried hospice and I begged them to come and see her, and they said, "Is she dying?" And I said, "She's going to die if nobody sees her." And in the end they said no, that they wouldn't come.
With no other option, Tammy was admitted to hospital where she stayed for 3 months. In this time, Glenys started texting other women with severe ME in the same hospital.
I realised that 2 of them had nowhere to go. Their families were now unable to care for them. They were stuck in the hospital, and I was in an impossible situation with my daughter, an impossible situation to bring her home and then know that I would not be able to care for her as she needed to be on my own. So we came up with this plan of shared care. That's Tammy. She wants her teeth cleaned.
Tammy is entitled to 3 hours of funded care a day.
So it's looking rather daunting. There's a lot of prep for Ree with her medications.
By pooling together the hours of other patients in the shared care home, Glenys worked out she could hire 6 support workers. This gave her help in the mornings and evenings and 2 8-hour periods off each week. Glenys is completely unpaid, and her partner Dave have paid out of their own pocket to have their house renovated for people with severe ME.
We've got the thickest underlay that we could afford, block-out curtains. We've put acoustic panelling up in some of the rooms to absorb the sound.
Dave has even installed a ceiling scale so the women can be weighed while lying down.
Part of the difficulty here is that ME is not considered a disability, so it doesn't have the kinds of resources available to it. It is so poorly recognised. It's been really difficult because there isn't a definitive test. Of course, the other thing that there isn't definitive tests for are mental health conditions, and so it has often been lumped in with mental health conditions, which it is not.
A quick history lesson of ME explains why it's so misunderstood. In 1969, the World Health Organization recognised ME as a neurological disease. But a year later, 2 psychiatrists published a study that said it was psychological, and due to hysteria because more women were affected. The research was heavily criticised for being inaccurate, especially because the psychiatrists didn't evaluate any ME patients in the study. More research into the 80s falsely claimed the condition was psychological and due to a fear of exercise. So therapy and exercise became the only recommended treatments for ME. despite growing research proving the condition wasn't psychological, and exercise and mental activities can make the condition much worse. Over the last few years, major health agencies across the world have withdrawn these recommendations because they have caused harm to some patients. Instead, pacing, where the patient balances activity with rest to avoid overexertion, is recommended. In New Zealand, the Ministry of Health says it does not have a specific position statement on ME, but recognises the serious and long-term impact it can have on people's lives. It says, like other chronic conditions, the healthcare required varies from patient to patient, so each diagnosis and care plan is managed by a GP. The Royal New Zealand College of GPs told Re News there remains polar opposite views of how to best manage ME. While there are ME training modules for GPs, upskilling in any given area means not doing so in others. It says, what is clear is that for a long time ME CFS patients have been stigmatised and as a result have often felt marginalised by New Zealand's health system. It's important the patient is able to feel heard and have their health taken seriously. But some say this idea that ME is psychological has stuck.
All of this stuff, do you want it somewhere?
Nah, it's useful.
Okay.
Have you ever witnessed Ree being told that her illness is just psychological?
Yeah. On so many cases. Generally prescribe things like mental health support or, wellness type stuff. Like it affects so many parts of your body, and so for a scientist or a doctor to discredit that blows my mind. Why would you put yourself in a situation where you are bedbound and can't live your life? Ree would give anything to be back in 2018 where we were studying together and she wanted to be a scientist.
Treating ME as psychological can be fatal.
27-year-old Maeve Boothby O'Neill died from malnutrition and dehydration. She'd been living with ME for over a decade.
An inquest found Maeve's death was preventable and due to a lack of training among health workers who treated her illness as psychological. The coroner found there wasn't a single bed in the UK that was set up for ME patients, and so Maeve died at home.
It's exhausting to see the perpetuation of misinformation. That idea of this being hysteria was applied to a lot of conditions that we just didn't understand. I mean, the one that sits alongside ME is multiple sclerosis, and that was considered to be hysteria for a long time until the test was revealed, and we can now see it, and we're expecting at some point this will happen for ME as well.
When people go and get a blood test done, and even a full spectrum of everything you can think of, it is not unusual for them to all come back normal. That's because we don't have the right test to detect and pick up the immune dysfunction. It's ridiculous to call a condition psychological just because the tests that exist today don't pick up dysfunction.
Dr. Anna Brooks is a cellular immunologist who has become one of the country's leading experts on post-viral conditions. She is leading a study that is trying to find blood tests that will detect immune dysfunction. She says this will help us understand why a virus can cause ME and help validate the condition.
We know through thousands and thousands of publications that there is dysfunction. We can see this in the research lab. It's just that those types of complex testing are not yet available. There are plenty of medical conditions that don't have a one-stop shop diagnostic test, and they're still taken seriously. I cannot believe or stomach some of the stories we hear about not being listened to.
Brooks says the fact we don't know what causes ME should be an emergency.
It could be the flu that triggers someone's illness. It could be a bacterial infection. It could be COVID-19 again, and it might be a virus you've already had. We just don't know why, and we don't know what that facilitating factor is that triggers the road to not recovering. Until we understand who is at risk, we are all at risk.
We don't choose this. We don't want this. I've got nothing to gain from this. I've lost absolutely everything. I think you can just spend a day in a room with me and it'd be pretty clear that I'm not lying.
For now, until tests and treatments are developed, Glenys is hoping others will be able to follow in her lead in setting up care homes.
It makes me feel like something is actually being done for people with this illness, because if this hadn't come up, Ree would be facing 2 more years, 3 more years, 4 more years in hospital with no real outlook on what could be done to make her situation better.
Medication chart with identification photos.
Oh, that's so good. This is such a big learning curve. Okay.
When do you get a break?
I haven't figured that one out yet. I'm hopeful that that will come. It'll be like insulin for diabetics. Watch his space. Okay, what was I going to have to do for her? I can't remember. He got water. Okay.